Previous part summary: dark lines of tramway stretched across the river, appearing almost like strings awaiting a bow's touch. Night offered no flashes or trails, just a precise outline of streets. However, there lingered a haunting emptiness, as if something foreign hid in the very air. The routine pilots were already airborne, and the controllers spoke in short, careful sentences. In the reports, definitions held no weight. Flying objects. The situation remained unstable. Visual contact was compromised. The absence of clarity created a deep sense of unease. Concrete details could be measured, classified, even counted. But the nameless form multiplied and loomed larger. He saw his lean face in the mirror, sharp cheekbones standing out starkly. Strands of neatly combed hair had slipped out of place, and shadows of sleepless nights were evident in his eyes. Far from merely fatigued, he felt exposed before the unknown. Dressed in a cozy dark sweater and soft wool pants, he gazed at the suit draped over a chair, a symbol of daytime defensiveness, now feeling like armor he longed to don. With a deep breath, he squared his shoulders, took his glasses from their case without putting them on, and instead, gripped them tightly while attempting to corral his racing thoughts. Approaching the window, Warsaw felt like a city whispering its secrets in the night. The lights of the bridges shimmered within the river, reflecting the quiet tension in the air. Yet the silence shattered as he dialed a number he would have postponed in daylight. Night demanded a different etiquette, it knew no pauses. The ringing felt like an endless fog-laden road, stretching his nerves with each passing second. On the third heartbeat, a peculiar thump resonated. The fourth heartbeat aligned his thoughts into a sentence, and by the fifth, a rhythmic click brought a calm, deep voice into his room. "I'm listening. Andrei Belousov." The screen's dim glow oddly grounded him, the chair materialized as furniture, the window transformed from a frame of anxiety to mere glass. "Minister," he rushed, his voice sharper than he intended. "We have unidentified objects reported above Warsaw. Alert forces are in the air. This situation is unusual. If this pertains to you, I believe it is crucial to alert you. Poland won't remain a passive observer." He wanted to say target but caught himself, the alteration evident in the small pause, like a barely audible rasping in his throat. Silence followed, measured and brief. New narrative, reports poured in, laden with vagueness. Flying objects, unstable readings, visual contact compromised. Each word draped an eerie shroud over the afternoon's uncertainty. Faced with this void of detail, his spine tingled with the chill of trepidation. Without specifics, horror took root, unmeasured and wild. He stared into the mirror, noting the sharpness of his features, the intensity of his dark eyes now shadowed with fatigue. Clothing hung loosely, a dark sweater concealing the weight of worries instead of armor. Yet the suit remained behind him, a reminder of daytime bravado. He hesitated before the glassy screen of the phone, feeling the smooth edges under his fingertips. This evening, he decided, was not for hesitation. As he dialed, uncertainty echoed in his heart, every ring a fleeting moment of dread. His pulse quickened at the third ring, and his breath quickened, anxiety rising like steam. Each heartbeat built a crescendo of tension before finally breaking with the calm depth of an anchored voice. "Listening. Andrei Belousov here." The exchange transformed the atmosphere, drained of trepidation, the room returned to its ordinary contours. "Minister," he stumbled briefly, words tumbling forth. "We have unidentified flying objects reported over Warsaw. Forces are in the air, and this is no routine matter. Poland cannot sit idle." The slip toward target lingered in the air, a reflection of his flaring emotions. Silence reigned, punctuated only by an unexpected warmth of laughter at the other end. "Carol," the voice lingered, scrutinizing like a hawk. "If there are UFOs invading Warsaw, heed this advice: read less news, watch more sensational programming. There's literature for this." The laughter followed, a flicker of familiarity grappling with the gnawing tension in the room. "Minister, this isn't a joke, this is about my nation's safety. Any intrusion into our airspace is treated seriously." With each exchanged word, the tension escalated, feeling heavier, yet strangely energized. "We have a right to protect our sky," he declared, his voice gaining strength. "Poland can defend its airspace," came the steady reply, a clear challenge. "And so can Russia." An additional weight shared between them, veering from the everyday, risking a plunge into deeper waters. In the flood of unexpected dialogue, cities, maps, and contours faded, leaving neither politeness nor formality, but stark human emotions. He broke eye contact with his reflection, inhaling the essence of possible resolutions thickened by the night. "Let's speak plainly, then," he offered gently. "Confirm that there are no interests of yours in Poland's airspace tonight?" None deemed threatening, Andrei responded smoothly. Yet, an underlying conviction lingered. "We can address security matters, yours and ours." The night lay thick with currents of history, drawing dark lines between their nations, a reminder of fragile borders. "Sometimes," Carol replied softly, "even a neighbor's silence can echo louder than their shouts." The moment hung in a fragile balance, waiting for clarity amidst chaos. "Light needs to happen, illuminate our shared skies." "Shared skies," Andrei repeated in an almost thoughtful tone. "No one escapes the weight of history. We are, after all, neighbors." Carol focused, his heart steadying at the fragile flicker of opportunity. "Then let's find clarity together," he asserted. "Perhaps dialogue could change the narrative." "Indeed, neighbor," Andrei murmured, "an unexpected ally in darkness. With light, we can seek answers." As the call ended abruptly, Carol held the phone, feeling the echoes of their exchange reverberate in the quiet of his room. The night outside draped the city in shadows, but he sensed a strange presence, as though the dark vaults of uncertainty were merely reflections of their fears. With newfound determination, he knew that words could build bridges just as powerfully as silence could create divides. As he ended the call, he wondered, could shared whispers thwart the storms before they arose? Previously, tensions hung thick in the air as Karol Nawrocki carefully chose his words, warning that Poland would no longer stand silently by. He almost called himself a target instead of a mere witness, an unintended slip that barely broke the silence. Then, a brief pause. Suddenly, a light, almost amused laugh interrupted the stillness. Not mocking, but unapologetic. "Objects in the sky," Minister Andrei Belousov finally spoke, weighing his words with precision. "Carol, if Warsaw has started spotting flying saucers, here's my advice: read less news reports and dig more into classified files. That's where the real expert knowledge lives." His chuckle was short, almost friendly, like someone easing tension out of habit. Yet, beneath the veneer, it stung. Nawrocki wasn't calling for jokes. Pinching the bridge of his nose, he fought rising irritation. "Minister Belousov, this is not some sci-fi story. We're talking about national security. Any breach of airspace will be treated accordingly. Poland has every right to raise its voice to its neighbor, but you also have the right to ask questions before throwing accusations," Belousov interrupted calmly. "You see, night has a tendency to magnify things." Nawrocki closed his eyes for a moment. That word, neighbor, grated against him, cold and strangely intimate. It stripped away dramatics, turning a potential ultimatum into a mundane conversation on a shared landing hallway. But the truth remained: Poland has the right to protect its skies, he asserted firmly. And to demand respect for our borders. Russia does too, Belousov replied without hesitation. And Russia prefers that people don't confuse rumors with facts in the dark. We're neighbors, Carol. Neighbors talk instead of throwing words like echoes down the line. Perhaps echoes meant wounded pride. The word landed sharply. A chill ran through the empty room. In these moments, Nawrocki felt the world melt away, no cities, no borders, just two voices clashing and intertwining in the cold night. He unbuttoned the top of his sweater, picturing himself from outside his own skin, a tall mature man with wary eyes that sometimes looked almost black under the dim bedroom light. Sharp cheekbones, a defined jawline. Lips paling slightly in disapproval. What decision would he make next when the night was so thick with danger and uncertainty? The phone call had just begun. On this tense night, a high-ranking leader awakens to a world of uncertainty. He contemplates his reflection, seeing not just a figure of power, but a man standing at a crossroads of fate. With dark eyes that seem to harbor deep concerns, he realizes that he must engage in a dialogue that could alter the course of his nation. "Let's talk," he asserts, initiating a conversation steeped in gravity. "Do you confirm there are no threats in Poland's airspace tonight?" The response he receives is vague yet unwavering. "I confirm that there are no significant interests to consider a threat. I'm prepared to discuss safety matters, yours and ours collectively." History teaches us that the barriers between neighbors are often thinner than they appear. You see, sound travels well. This statement resonates, igniting a pivotal shift in the conversation. Despite the delicate tension, the leader senses a moment of truth emerging from the psychological fog. History rings in his mind like a switch being flipped. He understands the weight of this discussion veers away from threats into a realm where he feels more assured. You've invoked history for good reason. Sometimes it's beneficial to remember, the other side acknowledges. Suddenly, an alert on his phone interrupts his thoughts, but he chooses to focus on the moment. Outside, the night air is still, as if someone were calming turbulent waters. Embracing this fragile pause offers a rare opportunity and invitation to listen, rather than to threaten. We will scrutinize the source of these signals, the leader declares, altering his tone to further ease the pressure. And I hope for your transparency. Any information you can provide will be welcomed. It's always more prudent than misunderstanding. The calm, almost ironic, response comes back. Sometimes at night, people think they hear footsteps in empty rooms. Just turn on the light, and you'll hear the click of a normal switch. How do these words resonate within the stillness of the night? What truths lie beneath the surface of this diplomatic banter? The power of communication lays the groundwork for future possibilities, but the uncertainty looms. The stakes are high, and the real battle may just be beginning. Summary: tension hung in the air as the conversation between Karol Nawrocki and Minister Belousov shifted. They navigated the delicate terrain of regional security, with nuances of irony punctuating their exchange. Nawrocki took a measured approach, aiming to steer the discussion away from bravado and towards cooperation. A ripple of irony marked Belousov's response, but it lacked malice. Nawrocki noted this, feeling an unexpected sense of discomfort, yet recognizing that irony was preferable to threats. In this subtle shift, he sensed an opportunity to guide the dialogue toward precision rather than bravado. "Let's shine a light on this, Minister," he suggested, as if commanding himself to focus. "I await confirmation on the channels, and once we have that, we can delve into substantial matters." "Do you have any objections?" "Quite the contrary," Belousov replied. "Let's keep this conversation factual and ensure we aren't casting words over a fence, but rather knocking on the door." The oppressive silence that had weighed heavily upon Nawrocki dissipated, granting him a rare moment of clarity. He glanced out the window at the river of city lights. For the first time in hours, the familiar street patterns no longer felt ominous. The city regained its substance. He removed his glasses, gently polishing the lenses as if clearing away not just grime but confusion. Before ending the call, he stated deliberately, "Neighbors are the people whose windows can be seen from yours. The night is long, but it's not without end." "Excellent," Belousov replied softly. "That means morning will come." As the call ended, Nawrocki set the phone down but didn't release his grasp. The conversation lingered in his veins, more like a subdued melody than an electric current, echoing softly even after the record had been lifted from the turntable. He approached his wardrobe, caressing the fabric of his suit jacket. The smooth texture felt familiar, the weight of daytime armor waiting to be donned. Yet tonight, he chose to remain in his sweater. He intended to face the remainder of the night as a man, not merely a politician. Still, the sky above Warsaw remained ominously empty, a void so profound it seemed to pulse with unease. An odd, almost mystical feeling crept in. The world sometimes reveals not threats but shadows of our own fears. This made the quiet words exchanged all the more critical. He turned off the screen, enveloping the room in a gentle twilight where the items faded into the background. His breathing steadied. The night lay before him, akin to a closed book resting carelessly on the table. Its pages would be turned later, but he had already grasped a profound truth woven between the lines: it is safer to converse than to remain silent. As silence enveloped his surroundings, it felt far from relieving. Instead, it echoed in Nawrocki's ears, a reminder of the delicate balance he now had to uphold. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, wrapping around Karol Nawrocki as he paced the dimly lit room. The earlier conversation with Defense Minister Andrei Belousov echoed in his mind, turning each thought into a shadow of unease. As the Polish president moved from the window to the wardrobe, and from the wardrobe to the chair, each step felt heavy, almost as if the weight of the world pressed against his chest. In the stillness of the night, he felt the silence reverberate in his ears, sharp and unyielding. The urgency of their earlier exchange lingered, rife with unspoken challenges. Belousov's calm, measured responses unnerved him. Every word felt like a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through the tension with unsettling ease. It was as if he were playing a game of cards, where the stakes were not just political but existential. Today, however, the game had shifted. A quiet smirk hung in the air, mocking his ultimatum like smoke dissipating into the ether. Then, abruptly, the internal phone rang. A shaky voice from his advisor delivered unsettling news. The pilots had returned, but the radar had gone silent. No visual contacts, no marks on the screens. Logic would suggest relief, but it was the absence of clarity that frightened him more than any sighting could. He sank into the chair, running a hand along the smooth armrest, reminding himself that this was a fight he might have to resume, even if his opponent had just disarmed him with tranquility. Minister, Nawrocki's voice hardened, we both understand that the skies over Poland aren't a film screen. Every shadow could signal a threat. If you expect to jest about this, let me be clear, Poland is a NATO member. Any incursion, he was interrupted by Belousov's stern interjection. You speak of incursion, that's a strong word, Karol. Are you sure you wish to operate on assumptions? As blood throbbed in his temples, Nawrocki tightened his grip on the chair's armrests. I assure you, Poland's security is not up for negotiation. We haven't forgotten the history that comes with being neighbors to Moscow. A silence loomed on the other end, thick and palpable. What was left unsaid hung heavily between them, a reminder of the delicate dance of diplomacy where every word could ignite a conflict. The echo of history, too, reverberated, reminding them both that in these dialogue exchanges, trust was fragile, and tensions could ignite with a single spark. But how do you negotiate with a ghost of the past that looms silently over your present? Are you certain you want to navigate assumptions? The president gripped the armrests tightly. His temples throbbed. I am convinced that Poland's security is non-negotiable. We remember history too well. The proximity to Moscow has never provided peace. The silence on the other end felt heavy, stretching long, but also filled with meaning. Then, Belousov spoke softly, yet with an edge. Remember history? Then recall another truth. Who liberated Poland from fascism? Whose blood soaked your land? How many Soviet soldiers lie in Polish soil, allowing your office to stand tall, rather than under a swastika? These words hit abruptly. Nawrocki felt shadows of past wars loom behind him. He knew he couldn't dispute these facts, but the tone unsettled him. We don't deny that, he managed to say. But this doesn't grant you the right to impose conditions today. No one is imposing, Belousov replied, his voice now calmer. I simply remind you that Russia and Poland share far more in common than it appears when we trade threats. Our factories were built together, our peoples have fought alongside one another. Yet when night falls, the first thing you do is grab the phone to issue ultimatums. Nawrocki fell silent. Two feelings battled within him, wounded pride and a strange respect. He hadn't anticipated that a conversation beginning with accusations would shift to recollections of the past. Belousov continued, King, you're an intelligent man. I hear it even in your anger. But think, without the Soviet soldier, you wouldn't be sitting in your office, instead of a tie. You'd be facing a noose. Nawrocki slowly lifted his gaze to his reflection in the glass. His face was tense, but it now conveyed contemplation rather than anger. Those words cut deeply, stripping him of counterarguments. He sensed the tone of conversation shifting from threats to something more significant and perhaps more genuine. He took a deep breath. All right, he finally responded. If we're discussing the past, let's acknowledge that history should not provoke new wars. Poland and Russia must learn to avoid repeating mistakes. Now that's a different discussion, Belousov interjected. We are neighbors, Karol. Neighbors can argue and distrust one another, but if they don't learn at least to converse, their homes might burn with a single spark. Nawrocki closed his eyes. In a world where words wield power, what happens when old resentments meet the dawn of understanding? As the restless hours stretch into night, two leaders engage in a dialogue that could dictate the fate of nations. When the past crashes into the present, will they discover a path to peace or ignite ancient conflicts once more? The dialogue had intensified, flickering like candlelight in the darkness of the room. With breath held, Nawrocki pondered the implications of Belousov's history lesson, feeling the weight of his own country's trauma wrap around him like a dense fog. What are we really protecting? Our pride or our people, he thought, grappling with the dawn of an unexpected realization. Amid the tension, how could he navigate this fragile moment? His resolve tightened. But a subtle shift within him began to unravel the established order. Would they continue to duel via their histories, or could they forge a new narrative? You're suggesting a shift in our conversation, but can we truly trust one another? Belousov's calm resonated, wrapping around Navratsky's thoughts. The tension in the air crackled like static, and Navratsky pondered his response, battling not to let emotion overwhelm his judgment. You talk of sparks, he replied carefully. But history is rich with unspoken exchanges, with silences that burn hotter than words. How can we move beyond the shadows of our past? With a deep inhale, he waiting for an answer that might shape their future. His heart raced. Would their conversation lead to understanding or drown in historical grievances? In that delicate moment, away from threats, the night held its breath. Night had settled over Warsaw, wrapped in silence, when anxiety crackled in the air, drawing King Navratsky into an unexpected call with Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. The two men, cloaked in the weight of their histories, found themselves standing on a precipice, facing fears that loomed larger than any aircraft in the sky. What truths would emerge from this dialogue, fraught with the potential for conflict? As Navratsky lay awake, the shadows crept in, nudging him from his restless sleep. He felt a shift within himself, an unsettling yet welcome fatigue that hinted at something deeper, perhaps a breakthrough. Their phone conversation had stretched longer than he had intended, time warping as if it were caught in the tension between two nations. Even the ticking clock seemed to mock him, each second a reminder of the urgency that hung heavy in the room. He sank into the armchair, his head tilted against its cool leather, casting a tired silhouette against the walls. The creeping fatigue felt both oppressive and liberating. The argument had given birth to a dialogue, whispered revelations piercing through the night's tension. Unexpectedly, Belousov's voice broke the silence, revealing a glimpse into his own past. You know, he began, the weight of memory coloring his words, I hail from a family steeped in the echoes of war. My father kept a helmet, riddled with shrapnel, alongside a medal for the liberation of Warsaw. As a child, I'd hold that medal, imagining what it was like to march across your land under fire. Navratsky straightened, disbelief washing over him. This was not the cold, calculated tone of diplomacy, it was profoundly human. Are you suggesting we should be grateful? He asked, his voice tempered, a far cry from the sharpness that had colored their earlier exchanges. No, Belousov replied firmly. Gratitude is a fickle feeling, it can be here today and gone tomorrow. I'm speaking of respect, of a thread between our nations that persists, no matter how hard we try to sever it. Images from his childhood fluttered through Navratsky's mind, school trips filled with the scent of damp stone and old photographs depicting split lives caught in time. He found himself reminiscing about the shared history between Poland and Russia, a tapestry woven with both pain and resilience. The Polish people have paid a terrible price, he murmured, tracing the contours of memory. We lost millions. Yes, Soviet soldiers shed their blood on our soil, but we too were soldiers, once allies, until new times arrived. Belousov's tone softened as he regarded the weight of their shared past. And allies we must remember to be. Tonight, you reached out with threats, but history has taught us that questions are far more constructive. As the night deepened, Navratsky felt the emotional landscape shift. Could two nations, steeped in tradition and turmoil, learn to speak to one another in ways that would prevent fires from igniting? With each heartbeat, the urgency swelled. Then let's keep talking, Navratsky insisted, fortifying his resolve. Let's illuminate the uncertainties that lurk in the shadows. Our dialogue may well determine whether the dawn brings hope or peril. In that moment of candor, clarity emerged, a fragile thread of understanding weaving through their words. Perhaps they could be more than the sum of their conflicts. Amidst an enveloping darkness, an open channel appeared, beckoning them toward peace, reminding them that sometimes, dialogue is the safest path through a storm. The silence that followed weighed heavy with unspoken possibilities. Under the cover of night, an unsettling conversation was taking shape between two leaders, as history threatened to repeat itself. Recent headlines reported unidentified flying objects over Warsaw, causing unrest throughout the continent. Poland's president, Karol Nawrocki, placed a tense call to his Russian counterpart, Minister of Defense Andrei Belousov. Their dialogue transformed into a political thriller, captivating Europe with its unexpected turns. As the call connected, a sudden stillness hung in Navratsky's bedroom, broken only by his quickened breaths. The usual tranquility of the night morphed, pulsating with an undercurrent of alarm. He had been jolted awake, the soft blanket slipping from his shoulders, as apprehension coiled around his spine like a chilling vine. Navigating his way through a dimly lit room, he felt the familiar weight of his responsibilities reflect in the shimmering glass of a painting. Unidentified objects in the skywards flickered through his mind like arrows, pressing against his conscience. This was no ordinary moment. His heart raced as he dialed a number he would have otherwise postponed. The echo of each ring felt agonizing, drawing him closer to a precipice. Then, a low, steady voice broke the tension. "I'm listening, Andrei Belousov," it declared. The urgency in Navratsky's voice contrasted sharply with Belousov's nonchalance. "We're seeing unidentified objects over Warsaw. Forces are on alert," he announced, masking a sense of vulnerability. The response came swiftly, tinged with irony. "If you're seeing UFOs, perhaps you should read fewer reports and watch more fiction." Belousov's laughter felt like ice piercing Navratsky's resolve. Was this a jest in times of strife? "This isn't a movie. It's about the safety of my nation," Navratsky shot back, his irritation palpable. The two leaders danced around each other, caught in a web of suspicion and history. "You know, suspicion does far more harm than open discourse," Belousov replied, lowering his voice but sharpening the tension. In this moment, both were confronted with the weight of their shared past. "We're neighbors whether we like it or not," Belousov emphasized as if to bridge the chasm between them. Navratsky's resolve faltered for a moment, a flicker of camaraderie igniting amidst the unease. Could they navigate the fine line between history's shadows and the urgent need for dialogue? "Perhaps you're right," he mused, feeling an unexpected relief wash over him. "But our people, they've learned to be wary, having stood between the hammer and the anvil." The night brewed with palpable tension, intertwining their fates, yet offering hints of an unlikely truce. Tension hangs in the air as the unexpected familiarity in Belousov's words resonates deeply. "You speak of the courtyard of history," he reflected. "But you understand, my people have learned to see not just neighbors in that space, but those who knock at the door with weapons. It leaves a mark. We are not accustomed to looking without suspicion." On the other end of the line, Belousov's voice softened yet strengthened, filled with an unsettling honesty. "Suspicion is a natural feeling, but it kills quicker than enmity. At least with enmity, you know your enemy. Suspicion, however, destroys from within, turning even an outstretched hand into a threat." Navratsky pondered this. The Russian minister's tone did not echo propaganda, it bore the weight of personal experience. "You know, Karol," Belousov continued. "I was in Poland once, for an internship. We toured factories built together. I remember the elderly engineers. They spoke of their Soviet mentors with respect, not bitterness. That's when I realized, it all depends on what we choose to remember." This sentiment cracked the walls around Navratsky's heart. He could see before him not just a minister, but a man holding memories, ones of cooperation rather than strife. "My grandfather was in the underground," he found himself admitting. "He told me stories of hiding in basements, sharing the last piece of bread, but he never spoke ill of Soviet soldiers. He said that winter they stood side by side." "See," Belousov responded, warmth creeping into his tone. "That is real history. Not from textbooks, but from family memories." Navratsky felt his throat tighten, the weight of shared recollections heavy in the air. He stood by the window, flinging it open. A cool breeze surged, bearing scents of river and wet stone. Warsaw slumbered, but there was no sense of unease, only the deep breath of a city at rest. "But what if tomorrow brings a threat again?" he queried, not turning around. "What if history decides to repeat itself?" Belousov's reply came, grounded and unpretentious. "Then neighbors must be ready to face it together." That simple assertion struck harder than any declaration ever could. Navratsky lingered at the window, contemplating the irony. Just an hour ago, he was prepared to issue ultimatums, and now he found himself engaged in a dialogue about shared memories and destinies. The night wrapped around them, laden with unspoken fears and unyielding possibilities. Would their shared acknowledgement of the past be a stepping stone or a stumbling block? As both leaders faced the reality of their respective nations' histories, an unexpected bond began to brew, challenging everything they once believed about enmity and cooperation. Would this unexpected alliance withstand the storms of the past, or would it fracture under the weight of suspicion? Just an hour ago, a quiet plea echoed through the tense night air. Neighbors must face the coming storm together. Karol Nawrocki stood by his window, wrestling with an odd truth. Not long ago, he was ready to shout ultimatums, but now he was listening to a man who spoke of shared memories, intertwined fates. How could the enemy become a partner overnight? Was this the fragile seed of peace, or something else entirely? He closed the window slowly, the chill of the night retreating with it, and settled back into his chair, eyes locked on the glowing phone screen. The image reflected in the glass shifted, his expression softened, though a deep seriousness remained. Andrei Rimovich, he said for the first time fully, naming the man on the line as if breaking some invisible barrier. I want you to know, despite our disagreements, Poland does not seek Russia as an enemy. The reply came steady, calm. That's good. Russia doesn't see Poland as an enemy either. We seek neighbors, people to talk with. For the first time since this long, restless night began, Nawrocki allowed himself a real smile. The knot of anxiety still hummed within, but it no longer ruled him. What started with threats had softened to a reminder. Even the darkest nights leave room for conversation. He rested the phone gently on the table, without ending the call. His eyes scanned the screen like a general reading a battlefield map, each sound, every exchange, every word and maneuver a vital move. His fingers drummed on the wooden surface, a rhythm unnoticed, a silent echo of the storm within. You must understand, his voice firmed. Sharper than before, Poland can't afford weakness. If unknown objects appear in our skies, we must respond. I cannot calm our people with vague talk about neighbors or borrowed histories. They demand action. A heavy silence stretched from the other end. Andrei Belousov said nothing. That pause was louder than any response. It stretched, a tightrope of nerves pulled taut. Finally, the low voice returned. The people demand action, you say. But honestly, what action do they want? Planes chasing shadows every night? Headlines screaming of a war nobody declared? Nawrocki's brow furrowed, anger creeping under the skin. Too much truth lay in Belousov's words, unavoidable, stinging. The people want certainty, he said, steady now. And certainty comes when their leader speaks clearly, not in riddles. A quiet chuckle, without malice, answered him. Then I'll be clear, Russia sends no threats your way. For a moment, the night outside seemed heavier, as if holding its breath. Two worlds clashed in silence, each weighing the words carefully. Could this fragile exchange settle the restless skies? Or was it the calm before a far greater storm? The phone screen flickered in the room's dim light. The conversation was far from over, and so was the night. In a moment that would send shockwaves across Europe, King Nawrocki of Poland found himself in the midst of an unexpected midnight call. Just 5 minutes ago, a troubling news report broke. It all began with a single phone call to Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. Their exchange unfolded like a gripping political thriller, leaving everyone eager to uncover the ramifications of their conversation. Stay with us to the end, you'll be astonished at how the narrative twists. Amid the oppressive silence of the night, Nawrocki was jolted awake as if nudged by an invisible guardian. It was between September 9th and 10th when apprehension seeped through the air, sending chills down his spine despite the warmth of his bedroom. The serene decor around him, with its sordid lines and earthy hues, felt a world apart from the turmoil on the fringes of his thoughts. He opened his eyes to a flickering phone screen, laced with notifications that loomed ominously, the words unidentified objects in the sky piercing through the stillness. He sat up abruptly, the warmth of his cozy blanket now feeling like a burden as he tossed it aside. A sense of dread filled the room, a physical tension that crackled like static. Warsaw lay beneath him, seemingly asleep, its bridge lights shimmering on the dark water like distant stars. But in that tranquility, something felt off. The calm signaled a prelude to chaos, a foreboding message hovering in the shadows. He grasped his glasses tightly, his mind racing as he prepared to place a call. Cold night etiquette demanded urgency. He dialed a number that, in daylight, he would have postponed. Every ring felt like a heartbeat, culminating in a familiar voice. I'm listening, Andrei Belousov. The speaker's tone, low and steady, filled the space like a heavy fog. Minister, we have unidentified objects over Warsaw. Our alert forces are mobilized. This is an abnormal situation. Consider this a warning. His voice trembled with restrained urgency, alluding to the gravity without invoking panic. Belousov's laughter was soft, framed by casual indifference. If you're seeing UFOs in Warsaw, my advice is simple: read less news and watch more documentaries on such occurrences. There's a wealth of expertise on the matter. Nawrocki felt the bite of that comment, irritation pushing him further. This is not about comedy, Belousov. This is about my nation's safety. Any breach of airspace will be taken most seriously. Are you certain it's a breach? Or perhaps it's a figment of your imagination? The sarcasm was palpable, a reminder of the careful balance between jest and menace. His response to that was stifled. The conversation had transformed cities, maps, and borders blurred into insignificance, leaving only the subtle tones of their voices, each loaded with implications. Nawrocki imagined himself in the protective embrace of his role, yet felt exposed and vulnerable, standing in the crosshairs of an invisible conflict. Poland has every right to secure its skies, he asserted, the breath of strength in his words calculated. And to demand respect for its boundaries. Belousov responded with an unwavering calm, so does Russia. At night, one can be prone to confusion. Surely you understand. The pulsating tension in the room began to shift. Nawrocki sensed the dawn of a different kind of conversation, a bridge instead of a wall. Let's talk openly. Do you confirm there are no interests in Polish airspace tonight? I confirm there are no intentions that could be perceived as a threat, Belousov replied, suggestion simmering beneath his tone. We, too, are interested in the safety of all neighbors. History teaches us that thin walls mean good eavesdropping. The mention of history struck Nawrocki like a hammer, shifting the conversation into a broader perspective. In this uneasy dialogue, he recognized a glimmer of potential, a chance to navigate through the minefield of uncertainty. Let's illuminate our fears, he proposed, dropping the pretense of bravado. While we investigate these signals, I hope for your transparency. Any information is welcome to ease tensions. Openness, Belousov agreed, is always cheaper than misunderstanding. As their voices drifted into the night, Nawrocki felt the weight of their words as the silence deepened around him. With a mix of resolve and vulnerability, he stepped away from the edges of confrontation into a space that craved understanding. Neighbors should not hurl accusations over fences but knock on doors, he concluded, his voice steady. This night may be long, but it is not endless. Belousov's quiet response lingered in the air. That's excellent. It means tomorrow will come. With that, the line went dead, echoing the uncertainty that hung in the air like a fog, but also a slight promise. In the aftermath of the call, Nawrocki stood, feeling both the heaviness of the burden and the small light of hope. In the end, navigating through whispered fears felt more impactful than silence, a reminder that dialogue could triumph over shadowy unknowns. In a world on the brink of chaos, a midnight phone call between King Nawrocki, the President of Poland, and Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov sparked a thrilling tale of political tension. Their dialogue revealed deep-seated fears, revealing how one small miscommunication could lead to conflict. As the world held its breath, what secrets would be uncovered, and who would emerge victorious? Nawrocki's night was haunted by shadows and whispers within his quiet room. He rose, feeling the prickling of unease dance across his skin. Outside, Warsaw lay swathed in an eerie calm, yet the air crackled with unspoken tension. He knew that the unseen presence of something ominous loomed above. Reports of unidentified flying objects twisted through his mind like an ominous coil tightening around his thoughts. The digits on his phone felt cold against his fingers as he made the fateful call, knowing he was stepping into unknown territory. Minister Belousov, we are detecting unidentified flying objects over Warsaw. This is not a standard situation. If this involves you, I must warn you now, he said, his voice echoing with urgency. Attempting to maintain his authority, he felt an unexpected shiver at the minister's response. Belousov's calm demeanor morphed into something sharper, something more dangerous. The endurance of your fight is at stake, Belousov replied, cool and methodical. Ultimatums lead nowhere, you know this. The weight of those words struck Nawrocki deep, nudging him toward a precipice. Would he stand firm, or would he retreat? He pondered how easy it was to misinterpret shadows for adversaries when fear clouded judgment. Feeling relief slip away like sand through fingers, Navratsky pressed on. I am not asking for a fight. I expect confirmation that your forces are not involved in tonight's events. The time for silence has passed. A heavy pause hung in the air, the implications gnawed at him. Belousov's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Wisdom lies in dialogue, not threats. And if you are wise, you will remember your history. Silence wrapped around Navratsky as he contemplated the path of wisdom versus the allure of aggression. His memories flickered of his grandfather's soothing words from another time. In silence, we find strength. Would this silence serve him now? I will not lash out, he finally said, reasserting his stance. But clarity is needed. Tomorrow must bring answers. Expect confirmation, Belousov replied. And remember, President. A common ground is built on credibility, not fury. As their call ended, Navratsky felt the tension release from his chest like a long-held breath, leaving him open to the vulnerability of his humanity. The night had been dark, but clarity was dawning on the horizon. 5 minutes ago, the world was shaken by a distressing news flash. King Navratsky, the president of Poland, unexpectedly initiated a midnight phone call to Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. Their conversation spiraled into a political thriller, the weight of Andrei Rymavich's words sending shockwaves across Europe. Stay with us as we reveal how this intense exchange unfolded, and you'll be astounded by the unforeseen turn of events. Awakening from a suffocating silence, Navratsky felt an urgency wrap around him like an invisible cloak. The clock hovered between September 9th and 10th, and it was as if a silent guardian nudged him awake. The suffocating quiet stirred with the distant hum of alarm. Peering into the gloom of his bedroom, he sensed something amiss. The glow of his phone screen flickered against the wall, reflecting a warning: unidentified objects in Polish airspace. This demanded immediate action. Gathering his thoughts, he glanced at his reflection, a thin visage shadowed by dark circles, all hinting at the weight of the night. The room felt stifling as he threw on a thick sweater, haltingly stepping to the window where Warsaw lay quiet but alive with whispers. The bridges glimmered over the river, and nearby, shadows darted, their urgency palpable. Who dared breach his skies? In a moment plagued by anticipation, he dialed a number he would have let drift in the daylight's embrace. The night harbored no time for hesitation. With each ring, tension consumed the space. The seconds felt like minutes until he heard a calm voice answer, "I'm listening." Andrei Belousov. There it was, the conversation had become tangible, the stakes suddenly real. Minister, we've detected unidentified objects over Warsaw. Our forces are on alert. This situation deviates from the norm. He had to emphasize his state's defensive resolve. Navratsky's voice held an edge tighter than he intended, a command cloaked in urgency. But if you're seeing items up there, you might want to consider tuning into reality rather than something out of a sci-fi movie, Belousov retorted, a chuckle in his voice, easing the tension but nudging Navratsky's irritation. This isn't about the news, Andrei, it's about the safety of my nation. Any airspace violation will be taken seriously. Belousov responded with an unwavering tone, and that's exactly the thing, Carol. We should be asking questions before resorting to threats, don't you agree? Nighttime loves to distort reality. Just like that, Navratsky shut his eyes momentarily. The term neighbor hung in the air as he weighed its implications in this precarious dance of diplomacy. Poland has every right to protect its skies. His statement hung between them, vast like the dark outside but charged with a growing intensity. Russia, too, holds that right, Belousov returned, cool as ever. We should communicate, not shoot echoes at each other over the line. That line carried much more than just words, as the boundaries began to blur. In that moment, he realized the very notion of geography dissolved under the weight of their conversation. A tall man at a pivotal crossroads. He caught his reflection, a leader entwined with humanity itself. Let's talk, then, Andrei, Navratsky prompted, his mind shifting from fears to possibilities about the future. Can you confirm there's no military interest in Polish airspace tonight? Indeed, there's nothing that your nation should treat as a threat, Belousov reassured him, though the words felt evasive. And this is worth remembering, history is a powerful teacher. We shared both good and bad times. The concept of history tickled a different nerve in Navratsky's mind. That moment marked a crucial shift, he leaned into the conversation, eager to explore a future beyond mere intimidation. As they spoke, the scent of cold coffee lingered, a reminder of the weariness of sleepless nights. The faint light of dawn began to creep over Warsaw, casting shadows that no longer felt haunting. "Do you know what we forget?" Belousov's voice broke through, full of unexpected warmth. "It's not just about security and fear, it's also about building the future. Factories. Schools. Bridges." Caught off guard, Navratsky paused, allowing Belousov's words to sink in. "You want to talk about bridges at 4 in the morning, he responded, a smirk creeping in despite the gravity. "Why not? History is rich with collaboration," came the thoughtful reply. As they revisited memories of factories once thriving in planes like the Yak-38 and Yak-141 that forged connections, Navratsky felt the tightness in his chest begin to fade. This could be a new chapter, one that hinged not on threats, but on partnerships. "Then let's speak clearly, let's shed some light on these concerns," he declared, taking tactical control. "I require updates to grasp what's occurring, and only then can we have a constructive dialogue." "I agree," Belousov stated, indicating his openness to resolve matters amicably. Underneath the weighty words lay the soft embers of shared history, words that could both bind and liberate. The two leaders navigated the delicate dance of diplomacy, their voices mingling with the thin morning air. "After what felt like an eternity," Navratsky said, "neighbors are people whose windows you can see from your own. The night is long, but it isn't endless." "Exactly," Belousov responded quietly. "This means there will be a morning." With that, the connection cut off. As he lowered the phone, a lingering melody of the conversation hummed through him, neither electric nor sharp, but a low, resonant tune reminding him how crucial communication could be. He moved toward his coat, the familiar weight of it beckoning him to his responsibilities. But for now, he cherished the night air a bit longer, aware that his role as a leader could not overshadow his humanity. Above him, the sky remained a canvas yet to be painted, waiting for the first strokes of dawn. Awareness washed over him. Sometimes, the biggest threats stem not from the darkened skies but from the shadows of unspoken fears. The watchful silence spoke volumes, and within its depths lay the uncharted territories of dialogue, ripe for exploration. In the previous part, the dialogue between Karol Nawrocki, the President of Poland, and Defense Minister Andrei Belousov deepened. They explored the nuances of power, memory, and the role of states as both players and pawns in the unfolding narrative of their shared history. They recognized the need for cooperation, with an air of cautious optimism emerging as dawn approached. What does it mean to become a player in the geopolitical chess game? When does strength transform from mere noise to the ability to extend a hand? As Karol chuckled softly, he mused, "You've adopted the voice of a philosopher, not a defense minister." "Sometimes philosophy is mightier than weaponry," Andrei replied calmly. "While weapons merely pause the dialogue, philosophy carves out the space to flourish." Walking slowly around his office, Karol felt the tension dissipate, replaced instead by an enlightening clarity that granted him the freedom to choose. "You mentioned memory," he pressed on. "Yes," Andrei acknowledged. "We need to remember both liberation and our shared history. Yet, memory isn't just an anchor, it can also become a ballast. Occasionally, we must let go, allowing the ship to sail." Karol paused, resting his hand on the cold surface of his desk. "So you're suggesting I don't sever the rope but rather untie the knots?" Andrei's tone softened. "You have that skill. I hear it in your voice." Karol allowed himself a gentle laugh, an unexpected response in the early hours. "If someone told me I'd be laughing at 4 in the morning discussing ropes and ships with you, I wouldn't have believed it. Yet here we are. Navigating the night, understanding that even it does not last forever." As he gazed out the window, light began to slice through the horizon, marking the arrival of morning. With the dawn came a revelation: the shadows that had haunted the night were no longer threats, but fading memories. "Let's greet the day without ultimatums," he declared firmly. "Then, we'll see what comes next." "That's a wise decision," Andrei replied, the tension in the air lifting. Silence enveloped them, and in that suspended moment, they were no longer enemies, but two leaders poised for what lay ahead. What dawn awaited them, shrouded in uncertainty, lingered in the air like the fresh scent of possibility. In the dimly lit office of Karol Nawrocki, Poland's president, a new day whispered its arrival. The soft glow of his desk lamp illuminated the room even as dawn steadily devoured the night outside. Leaning slightly forward, Naraki studied his phone as if it held the key to his very identity. Andrei Rimovich, he began, his voice steady, but filled with purpose. If we are to speak candidly about the past and future, let me ask, why do you remain so calm in response to my accusations? Most in your position would shout, threaten, demand, yet you laugh and tell stories. This feels like a game. Belazov paused before replying in a low tone, honestly, this is experience talking. I know the true cost of yelling. In war, only those who fear raise their voices. Those who can bear the weight speak softly. Naraki fell silent. There was no bravado in Belazov's words, just a weary wisdom that earned Naraki's respect, transcending political divides. Are you suggesting that conversation is a weapon? He probed. Conversation is a shield, corrected Belazov. And weapons are always at our disposal. The question is, why draw them if the shield holds? Such a simple metaphor resonated deeply with Naraki. He paced the room, glancing out the window at the first trickles of traffic on the streets of Warsaw. The city awakened, along with weighty responsibilities. I was raised to think of politics as a battlefield. The victor is the one who strikes first or is the trickiest, he remarked. Belazov countered, politics is instead a field of memory. The one who remembers best prevails, otherwise, any weapon will turn against them. Naraki reflected on this notion, which struck him as profoundly significant, leading him to recall history lessons filled with faded maps of Europe where Poland had once vanished and re-emerged. A nation that forgets is doomed to disappear, his history teacher had said. As he reveled in these memories of uncertainty, the outside world faded again, and silence enveloped them. This moment felt pivotal, clinging to the air as they stood on the precipice of deciding their nation's fates. Would they approach the new day devoid of ultimatums, or would the shadows of fear overtake them? Let's meet the day without ultimatums, he declared firmly. Then we'll see what follows. That is a prudent decision, Belazov responded. You've made your first move as a player, not a pawn. The conversation paused, and in that stillness, tension dissipated. Is that not why our people constantly live in anxiety? Belazov's voice was soft. We remember too much. Or perhaps, he continued, you should recall not just fear but moments of strength. Your rebels, your workers, your scholars, they too have written history, not just suffered from it. With this forward-thinking exchange, the flickering lights of diplomacy shone brighter in the cold night, hinting at unseen paths forward. What choices awaited them as the day broke? 5 minutes ago, a shocking report sent tremors across the world. King Nawrocki, the president of Poland, abruptly made a middle-of-the-night phone call to Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. What unfolded was a political thriller that rattled Europe to its core. Stay tuned to uncover the unexpected twists of this urgent conversation. As King Nawrocki awoke, his senses sparked like a dormant flame ignited by a sudden breeze. He lay still in the warm room, straining to hear the whispers of midnight. The silence felt thicker, charged with gravity. His eyes blinked open, wide and alert. He sensed an invisible presence stirring within him, a sentinel nudging him awake. Navigating his newfound anxiety, he tossed aside his soft blanket. The cool air pricked his skin, urging him to confront the growing unease. The charming lines of his bedroom, adorned with wood's tranquil hues, seemed to shrink under the weight of foreboding. A pale glow flickered from the nightstand, illuminating an urgent notification. Unidentified objects in the sky. Immediate decision necessary, the message flashed. With urgency coursing through him, he donned his glasses, squeezing them in a gesture of concentration. Gazing out over Warsaw, the city whispered secrets in the darkness, its lights fracturing in the river's embrace. Streetcars shimmered like untuned string instruments. Yet, hidden in the air was an emptiness, a void that felt almost sentient, suffocating in its silence. He knew the alert pilots were preparing, and the controllers spoke with curt urgency. Each report was vague, flying objects, unstable trajectory. Visual contact limited. There were no definitive answers, only the chill of uncertainty that gripped his heart. He caught his reflection in the mirror, a gaunt face framed with dark hair, eyes shadows of sleeplessness, revealing a man unmasked by the unknown. Clad in a dark sweater and soft wool trousers, his suit hung on the back of a chair, the armor of daylight, now shunned. Navratsky straightened, emboldened by resolve, and dialed a number he would have postponed in daylight. The knight demanded immediacy, hesitation had no place here. Each ring felt like a heartbeat echoing in an empty room. When the call connected, a calm but deep voice filled his chamber. "Listening," Belousov said, the simplicity of his tone grounding the atmosphere. "Minister, we've sighted unidentified objects over Warsaw. Forces are raised. This situation is unusual. If this pertains to you, I feel it necessary to warn you. Poland will not stand by." His voice had the weight of urgency, though he wrestled with the implication of his words. Belousov chuckled lightly, dismissing the tension. "If you're witnessing UFOs in Warsaw, the advice is simple. Read less news and engage more with the extraordinary." Frustration flared in Navratsky. "This is not a film, Mr. Belousov. It's a matter of my nation's safety. Airspace violations are treated seriously." "Every state has the right to protect its skies," Belousov replied evenly. "But it's important to understand that the knight thrives on exaggeration." A weary sigh escaped Navratsky's lips as he pondered the term neighbor. It bore a weight he wasn't prepared for. "Poland deserves respect," he stated carefully, his breath steadying. "Russia does as well," Belousov countered, a note of firmness solidifying the stakes. Neighbors must talk and not throw accusations over the phone. An unspoken tension floated between them, as cities and borders faded, leaving only echoing emphases. "Then let's talk," Navratsky declared, his voice steadied. "Can we strive for a future free from suspicion?" Belousov's response was firm. "If your calls shift from ultimatums to proposals, then yes." The unexpected warmth in his tone invited sincerity, a fragile connection unfurling between the two men. With newfound hope, Navratsky felt the immediate weight of the situation lift. Silence lingered, this time less of a burden and more like shared anticipation. Belousov shared a piece of wisdom honed over years in service. A state can be an enemy, but never a person. When we forget this, we lose more than we gain. Navratsky's brows lifted in surprise, leaning in as if the words might change the night itself. "Do you truly believe that?" "Absolutely. I see you not just as the president, but as a man awake in worry for his people," Belousov replied, awareness igniting a new camaraderie. Navratsky felt a comforting weight in his chest and allowed himself to lean back, soaking in the words. As he repositioned, pouring a moment into listening, he remembered, in childhood. The open acknowledgement of struggle crafted a narrative deeper than borders, stoking the ambition to find common ground amidst the looming darkness. What would happen next? Would this moment pave the way forward? Or was it merely an illusion of cooperation painting over fear? As the night lingered, questions hung in the air, enveloped in the quiet hum of uncertainty. Just hours earlier, under the cloak of night between September 9th and 10th, a conversation unfolded that may have prevented a catastrophe far greater than armies could handle. Two men, poised on opposite sides of tense borders, spoke calmly when the world barely dared to breathe. "No one will ever know this happened," said the Russian minister with quiet gravity. "And maybe that's how it should be. Recognition doesn't matter, only results do." The Polish president nodded to himself, grasping the truth in those words. History rarely remembers the silent negotiations, but those quiet moments often shift the course of events. In the glow of his desk lamp, his gaze fell on a photograph, the smiling faces of his wife and son, frozen in a summer memory. At that instant, their calmness felt worth far more than any public declaration or hardline stance. "You're right," he whispered. "I will act accordingly." The minister promised that when dawn broke, he would face the press with steady resolve. "The situation is under control. There is no threat. People need peace. This is wisdom. True leadership," he said, "isn't about shouting loudest. It's about letting others sleep safely through the night." Taking a deep breath, the president closed his eyes. The night had aged him, its hours carrying him from shadows of panic through frustration, from threats down to dialogue, from tension finally into understanding. His voice was soft but resolute. "If it weren't for the memory of that old Soviet soldier, for that history, perhaps we wouldn't even be here today. But maybe precisely because of that past, we must hold not on to fear, but respect." Exactly so, the minister agreed. History is not a weapon for ultimatums. It's a bridge for conversation. Opening his eyes, the president saw before him the long night now fading into a new day, one where he felt stronger than before. He gently set down the phone and sat still, breathing in the familiar sense of paper, coffee, and early morning stillness. Outside his door, assistants buzzed with preparation, folders and reports blanketing the desk, the clock marking time in steady beats. Yet inside, an extraordinary silence filled the room. Rare. Deep. Liberating. He realized how close they had come. Just a breath away, harsh words might have triggered a cascade of chaos. But one conversation, measured, patient, human, shifted the future away from the brink of distrust. The night no longer held threat. It held hope. The previous part illustrated the profound silence within the president, highlighting his inner transformation during a tense conversation. He realized how close he had come to plunging his country into distrust. Just a few harsh words could have triggered a catastrophic avalanche of events. Yet, through a simple exchange, everything changed. In that significant moment, the conversation brought forth memories instead of threats. It was a dialogue rooted in respect rather than ultimatums. As he stood by the window, he gazed down at Warsaw awakening to a new day. Children, clutching their backpacks, hurried toward buses, while nearby vendors opened their stalls, the fragrant aroma of fresh bread wafting through the air. The rhythmic hum of morning life wrapped around him, a soothing affirmation that night had not spilled into day. Inwardly, he recognized the truth in what Belousov had said: sometimes, words wield greater power than weapons. History abounds with chances to break cycles, but only if people have the courage to truly listen to one another. He brushed his fingers along the windowsill, a small gesture that signified his resolution, and whispered to himself, "So, it is possible to converse." At that moment, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. The weight of the night had lifted, leaving only the sweet memory of dialogue and the dawning light of a new day. And so, dear viewers, this tale serves as a reminder. Even in the darkest times, there is always space for a conversation that can alter the course of events. If you found value in this story, share its essence with others. Perhaps your experience with simple words overcoming threats could inspire someone in need of hope. As the sun rose over the horizon, illuminating the city, he realized that the future held promise, and understanding that dialogues, fueled by respect and shared history, might just prevent the shadows from creeping back in. In a world where power dynamics shift like the winds, a phone call shatters the night, awakening the President of Poland, Karol Nawrocki. Just moments ago, the skies above Warsaw were calm, but now, vague reports of unidentified objects loom large. With his heart racing, Nawrocki steels himself for a chilling conversation with Russia's Minister of Defense, Andrei Belousov. What could they reveal in the depths of the night? Are we on the brink of an unseen threat or a long-overdue collaboration? Nawrocki rose abruptly from his slumber, the silence enveloping him like an unwelcome specter. The room, though warm, felt charged with an inexplicable tension. Light from the small notification screen flickered gently, catching his attention like a ghostly whisper. His mind swirled with thoughts as he recalled the ominous headlines: unidentified objects in the sky. His secretary communicated with caution, afraid of igniting panic. He moved to the window and peered into the night. The city stretched before him like a living being. The lights twinkled in the distance, reflections dancing on the Vistula River. Yet there was a strange emptiness in the air, holding secrets just beyond the horizon. With the surveillance planes already deployed, there was no room for error. He dialed a number he would have skipped during daylight, a gesture of sheer urgency illuminated by the moonlight. "Minister Belousov," came the calm voice on the line. His words stung: an unknown object over Warsaw. Response is imperative. The tension crackled like static. This was no ordinary conversation. As Belousov joked, the weight of their country's histories bore down. If reports of flying saucers have emerged, he quipped lightly, it's best to avoid sensationalism. But Nawrocki's heart knew this was about more than mere jokes. Every airspace violation is taken seriously. "We will not stand idly by," he asserted, the steel in his voice revealing the gravity he felt. But Belousov's return was even cooler, each word measured as if balancing on a tightrope. "Nighttime often exaggerates our fears. Are we not neighbors?" The tag of neighbors sent a chill through Nawrocki. It carried implications, hints of fellowship and animosity mingling under the surface. As they traded verbal volleys, he felt the civilization's boundaries merge and shift, history breathing heavily upon them. In an unexpected turn, Belousov hinted that perhaps dialogue could repair the frayed strands of trust. "Shall we turn the lights on?" he offered, a metaphor hanging in the air. "I await your clarification on this night's threats." The conversation lingered, elucidating their ancestral ties as the night still wrapped around them like an incognito predator. Just as hope flickered, an unsettling silence enveloped the line. Would they be more than mere pawns in the grand game of geopolitics? As the dawn began to seep through the confines of uncertainty, a question hung in the air: was tomorrow filled with promise, or another layer of darkness? The fragile balance of cooperation and rivalry lay thick between them. This is where the story hangs in the balance, caught between dusk and dawn. Grappling with the fabric of old fears and the potential of new tomorrows. Will this dialogue spark a new dawn, or are they merely shaping into players of a play destined for dissolution? The line went eerily silent, both men waiting, hearts pounding, as the promise of what lay ahead stretched before them like the first rays of morning light. In the early hours of the morning, a nation trembled as breaking news reverberated through Europe. King Nawrocki, the president of Poland, found himself engaged in a late-night phone call that spiraled into a political thriller with Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. Their conversation sent shockwaves, igniting fear across the continent. Stay with me, for what unfolds is nothing short of astonishing. As the dark night stretched between September 9th and 10th, Nawrocki awoke to a silence thick with unease. An invisible sentinel seemed to nudge him awake, prickling nerves coursing down his spine like an icy vine. The president's bedroom was a portrait of restrained elegance, the stillness around him punctuated only by the glimmering notifications on his phone that whispered of ominous news. Unidentified flying objects had been spotted overhead, a call to action had been issued, yet the report was cloaked in vague terms. His mind racing, he dressed hastily, not in the armor of his formal suit, but in the familiar comfort of a dark sweater. Peering out the window, Warsaw lay beneath him, a city caught between breath and heartbeat. It was an ordinary morning, yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. He phoned Belousov, his heart pounding in rhythm with the waiting silence. "Minister," he said sharply, "we have unidentified objects over Warsaw. Our forces are on high alert. If this concerns you, I feel it is vital to inform you. Poland doesn't aim to be a spectator." Belousov's laughter crackled through the line, something light and dismissive, yet each chuckle felt like a jab. "If you're spotting UFOs tonight, maybe it's best to watch fewer reports and indulge more in sensational tales," he retorted. The jovial tone was frayed with irritation. Nawrocki wasn't merely vying for a laugh. "I'm not calling for jokes, it's a matter of national security," he asserted firmly. "Your right to defend your airspace is clear, just as it is ours," replied Belousov, unshaken. "The night amplifies whispers into myths. Can you grasp the futility in this?" In that momentary pause, Nawrocki felt a shift. Instead of a mere political confrontation, he sensed the real weight of their common histories. They were neighbors entwined in an unending narrative filled with whispering secrets. The word history hung between them, almost like a lifeline, prompting a more earnest reflection. Then, with a gentle resolve, the Polish president declared, "So let's talk with clarity, devoid of pretense. Can you assure me there are no interests of yours in Polish airspace tonight?" "Indeed, I assure you, there are no threats," Belousov responded, offering an olive branch as they both realized that conversations held the power to save lives, perhaps even more than armed forces. They began to shift from opposing positions to finding common ground, making their exchange deeply personal and unexpectedly human. As they shared a moment of quiet understanding, the sounds of Warsaw erupted outside, cars humming, trams chiming, sunlight slicing through the darkness. "Andrei Rimovich," Nawrocki stated, a smile creeping across his face, "thank you for tonight. This conversation may have saved not just my night but possibly someone's tomorrow." Thus, in the delicate balance of conversation, two men had deterred conflict not through military might but through the shared understanding of their humanity. But what happens when the dawn breaks, and the reality of their nations looms again? The questions linger in the air, heavy with potential. What would happen if a midnight phone call ignited a political crisis across Europe? Just 5 minutes ago, the world was shaken by a startling revelation. King Nawrocki, the president of Poland, found himself dialing Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov in the dead of night. Their ensuing dialogue transformed into a gripping political thriller, sending shockwaves throughout the continent. Stay tuned to discover the unexpected twists that will leave you astounded. As dawn approached on September 10, disquieting whispers invaded the silence of Navratsky's bedroom. He awoke with the sensation of an unseen guard nudging him awake, as if sensing a shift in the air. Bewildered, he lay still, absorbing the tension, before tossing aside his soft blanket. Goosebumps prickled his skin, despite the warmth of the room. A chilling unease slithered up his spine like a cold vine, reminding him of the precarious balance he was now facing. The president's chambers were devoid of chaos, filled only with understated elegance, clean lines and calming wood tones. Next to his bed, a screen flickered to life, revealing a pale stream of notifications. Scanning the ordinary headlines, one plotted his attention: unidentified objects in the sky. Immediate action required. With a slight tremor, he grabbed his glasses, still in their case, squeezing them tightly in his hand as he attempted to organize his racing thoughts. He approached the window, gazing out into the stillness of Warsaw, transformed by the night into a whispering entity. The city's lights shimmered like bright stars reflected in the river, while tram lines sprawled across the distant shore, barely touched by human hands. There were no flashes or trails of flight, just the intricate patterns of the streets below. However, his gaze was drawn toward the void, where possibility mingled with uncertainty. He was acutely aware that alert pilots stood ready and communication from the control tower was brief and guarded. Unidentified flying objects. He murmured, pondering the implications. Each word grew heavier as he wrestled with the tension. Would he take decisive action? Anticipation hung in the air like a thick fog, and with each moment ticking away, the question loomed: what would his conversation with Belousov reveal? Did you know that 5 minutes can change the fate of a nation? A midnight phone call from the King of Navratsky, the President of Poland, to Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov sent shockwaves across Europe. What could possibly provoke such urgency in the stillness of night? Join me as we unravel this gripping tale of political tension and alarming revelations. In that quiet darkness, Navratsky awoke from a restless slumber, the air thick with an unshakable tension that felt almost tangible. Time seemed suspended, the silence thick and heavy, whispering secrets that piqued the alarm inside him. It was September 9th, the boundary between another ordinary day and a night that would not let him rest. With a jolt, he rose from his warm bed, casting off the comfort of the soft blanket as a chill ran down his spine like an icy vine wrapping tighter around his thoughts. His bedroom, a stern blend of order and calm, reflected his usual composure. Yet, tonight, it felt different. The faint glow from his bedside screen caught his eye, a beacon of distress flashing urgent warnings. Unidentified objects in the sky. Immediate decision required. The words felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap. He instinctively reached for his glasses, needing clarity to navigate the storm brewing within. Stepping to the window, he gazed out into the night. Warsaw lay below like a whispered secret, its bridge lights sprawling across the river, casting an ethereal glow. Streetcars on the far bank resembled delicate strings yearning for a touch. Yet, amid the serenity, he felt an unsettling emptiness in the horizon. As if something unknown lurked just beyond the visual plane. The duty pilots were already aloft, an unspoken urgency echoing through the dispatcher's cautious reports. Flying objects, visual contact difficult, they announced, their words echoing wandering unease. Each phrase unanchored him further into the unknown. An ominous silence enveloped him, with each breath drawing in the weight of responsibility. Just then, in the depths of this eerie calm, clarity struck, his resolve sharpened. He picked up the phone, dialing a number he had hoped would never have to be called. The night demanded action, hesitation was a luxury he could not afford. As the phone rang, each tone felt like a countdown, a heartbeat intensifying. What would Belousov's response bring? Would they pivot from mere words to a confrontation? Or would the night reveal the shared vulnerabilities of neighbors in uncertainty? The stakes had never felt higher. Now, can you imagine how the conversation could tip the scales of history? Their exchange transformed into a political chess game, where each move mattered greatly, and the future of nations hinged on their dialogue. Would they recognize the need for cooperation despite the fog of suspicion? As the seconds crawled by, the answers lay just at the edge of hearing, waiting to be revealed. What lies next in this nightly political drama? Stay tuned to find out in the next chapter of this unfolding story. In the dead of night, a chilling newsflash rocked the world. The President of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, made an unexpected phone call to Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. What unfolded was not just a conversation, but a political thriller that sent ripples of fear across Europe. Stay with me as we unravel this gripping tale that proves sometimes the most dangerous adversaries can reveal unexpected truths. Karol Nawrocki awoke to what felt like a whisper in the darkness, an unseen force stirring his senses. The border between September 9th and 10th was punctuated by an internal alarm. He tossed aside his blanket and felt the cold prickle of anxiety run down his spine. His bedroom was a sanctuary of simplicity, yet the weight of an unseen tension hung in the air as notifications flickered on his phone like distant stars hinting at ominous events. His heart raced as he glanced at the alarming headline, "Unidentified Objects in Warsaw's Airspace." His secretary's cautious message felt laced with fear. With swift resolve, Nawrocki raised the phone to dial a number he never thought he'd call in the dead of night. The ring echoed hauntingly, each tone dragging him deeper into the murky waters of uncertainty. On the third ring, a calm voice filled his room. "I am listening, Andrei Belousov." The dialogue that followed would play a critical role in shaping the fate of nations. Nawrocki felt an unusual urgency, unlike the scripted speeches of the day. "Minister, we are tracking unidentified objects above Warsaw. Our forces are on alert. Poland cannot afford to be a bystander in this crisis." Belousov, almost teasingly, replied, "If you've started seeing flying saucers over Warsaw, the solution is simple: stop reading the news and watch a good movie." The lightness of his tone felt like a slap in the face to Nawrocki's seriousness. But the stakes were too high for small talk. "Minister," he retorted, "this isn't about a film. It's about the security of my country." Nawrocki felt the tension crackle like electricity in the air. Each word became a battle, and each moment stretched painfully long. This was no idle banter, they were grappling with the echoes of a shared history that neither dared to acknowledge directly. He challenged the phrase that hung between them, "neighbor," finding its way too burdensome. "Poland has every right to protect its airspace," he stated, infusing his voice with determination. In the silence that followed, Belousov's response was immovable yet laced with an unfamiliar warmth. "And so does Russia. Isn't it fascinating how night breeds misunderstandings?" Suddenly, something shifted. Their conversation transformed from a clash of nations to an intimate exchange. "Let's acknowledge the truth, Karol," Belousov said quietly, "nobody wants enemies over trivial misunderstandings." As he spoke, Nawrocki felt a weight lift from his chest, a signal of empathy replacing hostility. "I'll be honest," Nawrocki said, gazing out at the awakening city, bustling back to life. "People shouldn't become enemies just because politicians aren't communicating." A moment of clarity washed over them, akin to shedding heavy winter coats after a prolonged chill. They both realized the absurdity of their situation. A disorder threatening to spiral into chaos was diffused by simply choosing to communicate, to listen. Reflecting on what had just transpired, Nawrocki leaned back, a subtle relief melting into a smile that felt genuine. "Andrei, thank you. This conversation may have saved more than one restless night." "Sometimes, conversations save lives," Belousov replied, each word deliberate yet reassuring. Their shared laughter became a fragile bridge over troubled waters, an unspoken promise to keep talking and understanding each other. As they hung up, the city outside buzzed with life, a stark contrast to their earlier fears. It was then that Nawrocki felt the gravity of their pact, two men, navigating the murky waters of diplomacy and human connection, each bringing a flicker of hope to a tense situation. Their dialogue, he mused, could weave a new narrative, one where silence no longer bore the weight of anxiety. As he gazed at the sun rising over the horizon, he realized that while the night had been long, the dawn of understanding had begun to break through the clouds.